Even before starting the actual arrangement, playing the melody, I'm realizing that we have another great learning opportunity right there in the introduction to the song. I do an introduction that is a little bit different than what people mostly do. Since the tune is in the key of D, and of course, needless to say that this tune and any tune can be played in any key, but for the purpose of not complicating things too much, why not just play it in the key that we did it in and the key that most people play it in? So with that in mind, most people play something along the lines of D minor 7 to G7 and back, which is kind of an invisible 2-5 in the key of C without going to the key of C. Etc. It's a very common way to play the song, and that is a way that in itself can be built on, and many variations can be made out of it. If you know the contents of the scale, you can play a lot of variations inside the scale. And I squeezed in a half-step movement. Why not? You see, that's what I'm getting at, the variations. But at any rate, instead of talking about the introduction that I did not do, I'll just explain what I actually did choose to do instead. So I chose a different introduction. And my introduction, and by the way, the traditional quote-unquote introduction uses notes in the same key. So in other words, D minor 7 to G7 all use notes in the key of C. That's why I said that there are 2-5. They're not really a 2-5 because there's never a 1. It never goes to C. But if I was trying to figure out what notes to use, these two chords, the D minor 7 and G7, share the same group of notes, or as people like to say, the scale, which is the scale of C. All these notes were strictly diatonic notes in the key of C. All right. What I chose to do was something different. And my choice was to play a measure of D major of some kind, and we'll see what kind that could be, and alternate it with a measure of D minor, which is kind of a... This D minor is the reminder of what the other introduction would have normally been. So kind of making a reference to it, but my introduction is to play D major 7. And that's a nice contrast. And now we are truly using two different scales. And there's a purpose of me mentioning the idea of the scale, and I'll explain that in a second. So the scales are as follows. When we play the D minor, we already said that we are going to be using notes in the key of C. So if you want to put it that way in terms of modes, when I play a scale over D minor, it's going to be the D Dorian mode. And when I play the D major, that's going to be the Ionian mode, or the major scale. And why is this important? Because every time, every D major chord you choose to play, you can say to yourself, what is the one note, or the two notes in this case, that are different from this key of D major and the key of C major, which is the C key that we're using for D minor, the D minor chord? And the answer is that the F sharp that is appropriate for the D becomes an F natural. And the other answer is that the C sharp, which is appropriate for the D, has to become a C natural to accommodate the D chord, the D minor chord. So played against each other with just these notes, here's the difference in tone. Here's a D with F sharp and C sharp, and here's D with F natural and C natural. And in my YouTube arrangement, you can see this right away because I chose a cool voicing to start the song with, which was this one. And the way I play the bottom 4 strings, I have A on the 6th string 5th fret, the D on the 5th string 5th fret, F sharp on the 4th string 4th fret, and the C sharp on the 3rd string 6th fret. And I throw in these 2 open strings as well, because why not? They don't conflict with anything. That is your 9, that is your 6. They are neutral color notes. So this is a beautiful voicing that you can strum across all the strings. Now it's a whole other separate topic. I love playing voicings that have fretted notes up the neck and blending them with open strings. It's a really unique sound. At any rate, looking at this voicing, which by the way is a drop 2 voicing, second inversion because it has the 5 in the bass, find those F sharp and C sharp and lower them each half a step. So here they are, here and here, and change them to here, and then you got this chord. So that's how I started the arrangement. I think this was a good choice because these 2 voicings really highlight the unique color of the guitar, the open strings with blended strings. And when you change from voicing to voicing, from chord to chord, you keep a few notes and change some other notes. And again, you can keep the open strings. It's still a 9 and a 6. There's no conflict. And you can do so now on. Choose any voicing for D that you want. Here's your D major 7. I'm sure you know this shape. D, A, C sharp, and F sharp. In the 5th position, I also let the E ring, so it's a 9th. It's a nice sound. And as we said, we're changing the 2 notes and still keeping that open E. So want to choose this voicing maybe? Let's see how we can do this with other voicings and see how it affects what we're doing. So here's a D6-9, which works for the D major. So here's an A, that's common to both chords. Here's an E, that's common to both chords. Here is a B, which is also common to both chords. The only note that is not common is this note, the F sharp. We said already, it's good for the D, but not for the D minor. So maybe that's a difficult way to play it, but it's workable. Here's the D major. And here's a beautiful voicing for D minor, and the entire principle was, again, to see what are the common notes to both chords, and those can stay the same, and what are the notes that have to change, and just change those. Let's do this voicing, which I use often in this arrangement and many other arrangements. You might finger it this way. Basically what we have here is a D in the bass, of course. And then with my first finger, I play a partial bar on the upper 4 strings. And as I said, my fingering is a little bit awkward. I play it this way. You might play it this way. Most people probably do. So together I have D, B, E, A, and C sharp. And right there we can say that the only note that is different is going to be the C that has to become a C sharp. So now my voicing is going to be this. Very interesting sound. So, sorry, it would be this. This is our sound for the D minor now. Very cool. And if you're asking yourself, well, how come this is a D minor chord? I'd never seen this D minor chord. Well, the answer is there's nothing in this chord to say that it's not a D minor. The whole point of harmony, in my view, is not to make sure that you have certain notes in a chord, but rather make sure to have in a chord, to not have notes in the chord, notes that should not be there. So over a D minor, the notes that you don't want, a D minor 7, the notes that you don't want are the major 3 and the major 7, unless you want a minor major 7. But let's say now we don't want that. So we want to make sure that if we are to play some kind of a C, that it's not going to be a C sharp, but rather a C natural. And same thing with the third of the chord. We want to make sure not to play an F sharp, but rather an F natural. So that's how that became our D minor chord. Let's do one more and then we'll move on. I'm not sure I remember. I did some voicings like this. It's a tricky voicing for D minor. It's just a D minor 7 chord like this. But I also added the 6 on top, because I'm able to bend my pinky like this, but you might be able to do it with your third finger. That's a little bit trickier. You could just play a... So let's see. If we played a D minor 7 with a 6 like this, what would have to change to make it into a D major? Well, these two notes would have to rise half a step. So now we get this. So here we go. D major 13. Now, all this was about pairs of chords that are next to each other. But there's nobody's saying that we have to play pairs of chords. I can play this chord, and then this chord, and then this chord, and then this chord. They had nothing to do with each other. So all of this was just kind of a learning opportunity to see how I came up with these, when I did those, the pairs of chords, how they came about. Once again, making sure that whatever voicing you play for D major, if it contains an F sharp and or a C sharp, that when you alternate those with a D minor, those two notes, whichever exist in the chord, need to be moved down half a step. But there's no saying that you have to play pairs of chords. You can play any D major and any D minor that you like. But it makes for a really good exercise and a learning opportunity for harmony.